Good evening. I told Charmaine I did not want to be introduced by the voice of God unless it was the voice of Father Kevin Fitzgerald. That could be confused. He is a Jesuit after all. I'm obliged this evening to pat myself on the back. I'm not only responsible at Americans United for Life for having hired Clark Forsyth, now in his 27th year of service to this organization and this great cause. I'm also, as I put things together tonight, the tragic loss of the Stevens family, reminded of the fact that it was a chance encounter on a cold January day in 2008 on a Washington sidewalk not very far from here, where my wife, Julia, then my fiance, ran into two colleagues of hers from the Reagan White House, Dennis Stevens and Charmaine Yost. Charmaine mentioned that she knew me, as those things go. I got an email address, and I wrote to Charmaine, thinking that she might have a few ideas of people who might be interested in serving in the then vacant position President of Americans United for Life. Well, one thing led to another. We had lunch, and I expected maybe she'd come with a couple of names, and she came with one name, her own. I like that. And we have all greatly benefited from that, and I need say no further. You can look around you. We heard a few moments ago from George Weigel, the definitive biographer of Pope John Paul II. But did you know that AUL's founding chairman, just mentioned by Brent, George Hunston Williams, professor of divinity at Harvard and a Unitarian, was the first English language biographer of the Polish pontiff? That's true. As Yogi Berra reportedly said when informed that the Lord Mayor of Dublin, Ireland was Jewish, only in America. It's true. To which I would add, only at Americans United for Life. Tonight we celebrate a legacy, but only as a means to look forward. Ours is a long twilight struggle, to which aptly applies Edmund Burke's famous aphorism: there are no permanent victories and no permanent defeats. Permit me then some personal recollections of those who carried forward what Brent Bazell's father and the original AUL board started 4 decades ago. First, the man who brought me, Paige Cunningham, and many others to AUL and the pro-life cause, Professor Victor Rosenblum of Northwestern University. Talk about only in America. A Reformed Jew and liberal Democrat, Victor saw without hesitation that defense of the unborn was the preeminent cause of human rights in our time. Victor was far more than a unique witness to the cause of life. In successfully defending the Hyde Amendment before the U.S. Supreme Court, he argued not only on behalf of AUL and Henry Hyde. Teaming with Professor John Gorby and young Pat Truman, he persuaded a reluctant Carter Justice Department to defend vigorously the will of Congress and the American people not to fund abortion. Victor brought immense gifts as a renowned professor of law and political science to confront other difficult legal challenges facing AUL. He testified frequently before Congress, and in our most difficult moments led AUL fearlessly and cheerfully as our chairman. When asked in the 1970s on a popular Chicago television show what would happen if the furies unleashed by Roe v. Wade subsided and Americans simply accepted abortion on demand, Victor bowed his head and said softly, "That would be the saddest day in American history." To his death in 2006, he labored strenuously that that dreaded day would not arrive. 20 years ago, Congressman Hyde wrote, "While I don't believe in reincarnation, the return of Richard the Lionhearted as Dr. Joseph Stanton makes me pause in my disbelief." Dr. Joe Stanton, a founder of AUL and its longtime secretary-treasurer, together with his remarkable wife Mary, were the godfather and godmother of our movement. Dr. Joe invented the pro-life internet, while Al Gore was still in short pants or taking pictures in Vietnam. He clipped, tore, copied, and saved everything. Significant clippings arrived in the mail, often in bulky envelopes. and always with a tweet, a few scrawled words, barely decipherable, marking the importance of the enclosure. He forgot nothing and wore out many a young AUL staffer less than half his age. Teaming with his fellow AUL board member, Dr. C. Everett Koop, later Surgeon General of the United States, and others at AUL, he led the charge against medical neglect of the handicapped newborn, a victory won with the enactment of the baby doe legislation in the 1980s. Dr. Joe firmly believed in no permanent defeats. His own conquest of polio taught him that lesson. He was relentlessly encouraging. He always reminded us that those who lifted even a finger in defense of the cause of life were allies and could be won over to greater efforts. Being from Massachusetts, he knew that ours was a cause that is not of one political party nor of one religious faith. Which brings us to the founder, perhaps not of AUL, but surely of its mission as the legal and intellectual arm of the pro-life movement. After the catastrophe of January 22, 1973, the AUL board placed its future in the hands of a brilliant, pugnacious 41-year-old Chicago lawyer named Dennis J. Horan. It was AUL's defining moment. Dennis Horan was many things: a Division I scholarship linebacker, a published poet and philosopher, and by his 30s, a preeminent attorney in the fields of medical malpractice litigation and medical ethics. His vision for AUL was simple. It and the movement needed a legal defense fund to draft laws that would do what was possible to save unborn life while laying siege to Roe v. Wade by providing a stout defense going toe-to-toe with the ACLU in the courts. His legacy defies summation. The straw that stirred the drink, much more than that. Dennis designed the glass, distilled the essential spirits, and summoned the force that would, with the barest of material resources, stir and eventually alter the course of American legal history. His was a strategy that has rendered Roe v. Wade a hollow, indefensible shell, a judicial embarrassment, as he stated at AUL's historic 1984 conference on reversing Roe v. Wade. His scholarship and leadership dissuaded the courts from creating the constitutional right to euthanasia based on Roe. His was the pen that authored and co-authored scores of briefs, scholarly articles, and books that define, to this day, AUL's legal mission. His was the gift to teach, with a dazzling clarity of intellect, those who collaborated with him on so many of these projects. Dennis's widow and comrade-in-arms, Dolores Horan, was a student of Victor Rosenblum's at Northwestern. She and the family were unable to be with us. Dolores is finally moving out of the family homestead, northwest side of Chicago, after 35 years. But their heartfelt letter is printed as a keepsake at your tables. Please bring it home with you. It's a piece of history of the pro-life movement, and it expresses far better than I could ever do the love that Dennis brought to all his endeavors. The love that penned these words: viewing a mother, viewing her 4-month-old. Is that what Raphael meant when he made his Madonnas? Oh, how could the world know how I loved you unless, in her eyes, like the great explosion of a great surprise, and yes, the peace that only motherhood can bring. Dennis is surely with us tonight, along with Victor, Dr. Joe, and their friends Irma Craven, Mildred Jefferson, Herbert Ratner, Thomas Morrison, Guy Condon, and others gone before us and on whose shoulders we stand. They would take such great pride in what Charmaine and the AUL staff have done to carry forth their legacy back in the city where AUL began and to all corners of this nation. Let our efforts and theirs continue to honor their noble and courageous legacy. God bless you all.